Johnstone19.com. Creativity with a passion for a purpose. Now we're back to where we were. The end of the Institute. The Big Phone. Chapter 1. As far as Beaufort, the interior of the van was mostly silent. Dr. Evans did try to start a conversation once, again wanting them to know that he was an innocent party in all this. Tim told him he had a choice: either shut up and get a couple of the oxycodone tablets Dr. Roper had provided, or keep talking and endure the pain in his wounded foot. Evans opted for silence and the pills. There were a few more in the little brown bottle. Tim offered one to Mrs. Sigsbee, who dry swallowed it without bothering to say thank you. Tim wanted quiet for Luke, who was now the brains of the operation. He knew most people would think him nuts for allowing a 12-year-old to create a strategy intended to save the kids in that tunnel without getting killed themselves. But he noticed that Wendy was also keeping quiet. She and Tim knew what Luke had done to get here. They had seen him in operation since, and they understood. What exactly was that understanding? Why, that aside from having a yard of guts, the kid also happened to be a genuine bottled-in Bond genius. These Institute thugs had taken him to obtain a talent that was, at least before its enhancement, little more than a parlor trick. They considered his brilliance a mere adjunct to what they were really after, making them like poachers, willing to slaughter a 12,000-pound elephant to get 90 pounds of ivory. Tim doubted if Evans could appreciate the irony, but he guessed Sigsbee could, if she ever allowed the idea mental house room. That was a clandestine operation that had lasted for decades, brought down by the very thing they had considered sensible: this child's formidable intellect. Chapter 2. The Big Phone. Around 9 o'clock, just after passing the Beaufort city limits, Luke told Tim to find a motel. Don't stop in front, though. Go around to the back. There was an Nakano Lodge on Boundary Street. Its rear parking lot shaded by magnolias. Tim parked by the fence and killed the engine. This is where you leave us, Officer Wendy? Luke said. Tim? Wendy asked. What's he talking about? About you booking a room. And he's right. Tim said. You stay, we go. Come back here after you get your key, Luke said, and bring back some paper. Have you got a pen? Of course, and I have my notebook. She tapped the front pocket of her uniform pants, but I'll explain as much as I can when you get back. But what it comes down to is our insurance policy. Mrs. Sigsbee addressed him for the first time since the abandoned beauty parlor. What this boy has been through has made him crazy, and you'd be crazy to listen to what he says. The best thing the three of you could do is leave, Dr. Evans, and me here and run. Which would mean leaving my friends to die, Luke said. Mrs. Sigsbee smiled. Really, Luke, think. What have they ever done for you? You wouldn't understand, Luke said. Not in a million years. Go on, Wendy, Tim said, and squeezed it. Get a room, then come back. She gave him a doubtful look, but handed him the Glock. Got out the van and headed for the office. Dr. Evans said, I want to emphasize that I was here under protest. Yes, Tim said, we got that. Now shut up. Can we get out? Luke asked. I want to talk to you without... He nodded at Mrs. Sigsbee. Sure, we can do that. Tim opened both the passenger door and the slider, then stood against the fence, dividing the motel room from the closed car dealership next door. Luke joined him. From where Tim stood, he could see both of their unwilling passengers, and could stop them if either decided to try making a run. He didn't think that was very likely, considering one had been shot in the leg and the other in the foot. What's up? Tim asked. Do you play chess? I know the game, but I was never very good at it. I am, Luke said. He was speaking low, and now I'm playing with him, Stackhouse. Do you get that? I think I do. Trying to think 3 moves ahead, plus counters to his future moves. Tim nodded. In chess, time isn't a factor unless you're playing speed chess, and this game is. We have to get from here to the airfield where the plane is waiting, then to someplace near Presque Isle, where the plane is based. From there to the Institute. I can't see us making it until at least 2 tomorrow morning. Does that sound right to you? Tim ran it in his mind and nodded. Might be a little later, but say 2. That gives my friends 5 hours to do something on their own behalf, but it also gives Stackhouse 5 hours to rethink his position and change his mind, to gas those kids and just take off running. I told him his picture would be in every airport, and he'll buy that. I think, because there must be pictures of him somewhere online. A lot of the Institute people are ex-military, probably he is too. There might even be a photo of him on the Queen Bitch's phone, Tim said. Luke nodded, although he doubted if Mrs. Sigsbee had been the type to take snapshots, but he might decide to slip across the Canadian border on foot. I'm sure he has at least one alternate escape route all picked out, an abandoned woods, road, or a creek. That's one of those possible future moves I have to keep in mind. Only what? Luke rubbed the heel of his hand up one cheek, a strangely adult gesture of wariness and indecision. I need your input. What I'm thinking makes sense to me, but I'm still only a kid. I can't be sure. You're a grown up and you're one of the good guys. Tim was touched by that. He glanced toward the front of the building, but there was no sign of Wendy yet. Tell me what you're thinking. That I fucked him up. Fucked up his whole world. I think he might stay just to kill me, using my friends as bait to make sure I'll come. Does that make sense to you? Tell me the truth. It does, Tim said. No way to be sure, but revenge is a powerful motivator, and this Stackhouse wouldn't be the first to ignore his own best interests in an effort to get it. And I can think of another reason he might decide to wait in place. What? Luke was studying him anxiously. From around the building, Wendy Gullickson came with a keycard in one hand. Tim tipped his head toward the van's open passenger door, then brought his head close to Luke's. Sigsbee's the boss lady, right? Stackhouse is just her ramrod. Yes. Well, Tim said, smiling a little, who's her boss? Have you thought of that? Luke's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open a little. He got it, and he smiled. 9:15, Chapter 3, The Big Phone. The End of the Institute. 9:15. The institute was quiet. The kids currently in front half were asleep, aided by sedatives Joe and Hadada handed out. In the access tunnel, the five who had started the mutiny were also sleeping, but probably not deeply. Stackhouse hoped their headaches would be fucking them up most awesomely. The only kids still awake were the Gorks, rambling around almost as if they had somewhere to go. Sometimes they made circles, like they were playing Ring Around the Rosie. Stackhouse had returned to Mrs. Sigsbee's office and opened the locked bottom drawer of her desk with the duplicate key she had given him. Now he held the special box phone in his hand, the one they called the green phone, or sometimes the zero phone. He was thinking of something Julia had once said concerning that phone with its three buttons. This had been in the village one day last year, back when Heckle and Jekyll still had most of their brain cells working. The back half kids had just off the Saudi bagman who was funneling money to terrorist cells in Europe. And it had totally looked like an accident. Life was good. Julia invited him to dinner to celebrate. They had split a bottle of wine before, and a second bottle during and after. It had loosened her tongue. I hate making update calls on the zero phone. That man with the lisping voice, I always imagined him as an albino. I don't know why. Maybe something I saw in a comic book when I was a girl. An albino villain with x-ray eyes. Stackhouse had nodded his understanding. Where is he? Who is he? Don't know and don't want to know. I'll make the call, I'll give my report, then I take a shower. There would only be one thing worse than calling on the zero phone. That would be getting a call. Stackhouse looked at the zero phone now with something like superstitious dread, as if just thinking of that conversation would make it ring in his... No, he said. To the empty room, to the silent phone, silent for now at least. Nothing superstitious about it, you'll ring, simple logic. Sure, because the people on the other end of the zero phone, the lisping man, and the greater organization of which he was a part, would find out about the spectacular balls up in that little South Carolina town. Of course they would. It was going to be front page news across the country, and maybe the whole world. They might know already. If they knew about Hollister, the stringer, who actually lived in Dupre, they might have been touched with him for all the gory details. Yet the zero phone hadn't rung. Did that mean they didn't know? Or did it mean they were giving him time to put things right? Stackhouse had told the man, named Tim, that any deal they made would depend on whether or not the Institute would be kept a secret. Stackhouse wasn't fool enough to believe its work could continue, at least not here in the Maine woods. But if he could somehow manage the situation without worldwide headlines about psychic children who had been abused and murdered, or why those things had taken place, that would be something. He might even be rewarded if he could manage a cover-up that was watertight. Although just keeping his life would be reward enough. Only three people knew, according to this Tim. The others who had seen what was on the flash drive were dead. Some of the ill-starred gold team might be alive, but they hadn't seen it, and they would maintain silence about everything else. Get Luke Ellis and his collaborators here, he thought. That's step one. They might arrive as soon as 2 a.m. Even 1:30 would give me enough time to plan an ambush. All I've got on hand are techs and wide bodies, but some of them, Zeke the Greek, to name just one, are hard guys. Get the flash drive and get them. Then when the man with the lisp calls, and he will, to ask if I am handling the situation, I can say it's already handled, Stackhouse said. He put the zero phone on Mrs. Sigsbee's desk and sent it a mental message. Don't ring. Don't you dare ring until 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. 4 or 5 will be even better. Give me enough time. The phone rang, and Stackhouse gave a startled yell. Then he laughed, although his heart was still beating way too fast. Not the zero phone, but his own box phone, which meant the call was coming from South Carolina. Hello. Is it Tim or Luke? It's Luke. Listen to me, and I'll tell you how this is going to work. Now we're on chapter 4 of the big phone. The end of the Institute. Kalisha was lost in a very large house, and she had no idea how to get out, because she didn't know how she'd gotten in. She was in a hall that looked like the residence corridor in front half, where she had lived for a while before being taken away to have her brains plundered. Only this hall was furnished with bureaus and mirrors and coat racks and something that looked like an elephant foot filled with umbrellas. There was an end table with a phone on it, one that looked like just like the phone in their kitchen back home, and it was ringing. She picked it up, and since she couldn't say what she had been taught to say since the age of 4, Benson residence, she just said hello. Hola, mi oscars. It was a girl's voice, faint and broken up by static, just barely audible. Talisha knew hola because she had a year of Spanish in middle school, but her scant vocabulary didn't include es I can't even pronounce that, excuse me. Nevertheless, she knew what the girl was saying and realized this was a dream. Yes, I can hear you. Where are you? Who are you? But the girl was gone. Kalisha put the phone down and kept walking along the hall. She peered into what looked like a drawing room in an old-time movie, then into a ballroom. It had a floor made of black and white squares that made her think of Luke and Nick playing chess out in the black playground. Another phone began to ring. She hurried faster and entered a nice modern kitchen. The fridge was plastered with pictures and magnets and a bumper sticker that said Berkowitz for president. She didn't know Berkowitz from a hole in the wall, yet she knew it was his kitchen. The phone was on the wall. It was bigger than the one on the end table, certainly bigger than the one in the Benson kitchen, almost like a joke phone, but it was ringing. So she picked it up. Hello, hola, my name is Mi Lama. Felicia? But it wasn't the Spanish girl, it was a boy. Bonjour, oui, manzazes. French. Bonjour was French, different language, same question, and this time the connection was better. Not much, but a little. Yes, oui, I hear you. Where are... But the boy was gone, and another phone was ringing. She dashed through a pantry and into a room with straw walls and a packed dirt floor, mostly covered by a colorful woven mat. It had been the final stop for a fugitive African warlord named Badu Bakassa, who had been stabbed in the throat by one of his mistresses, except he'd really been killed by a bunch of kids thousands of miles away. Dr. Kendricks had waved his magic wand, which just happened to be a cheap 4th of July sparkler, and down Mr. Bakassa went. The phone on the mat was bigger still, almost the size of a table lamp. The receiver was heavy in her hand when she picked it up. Another girl, and this time clear as a bell. As the phones got bigger, the voices got clearer, it seemed. Je vous eat me? Another girl. Yes, I hear you fine. What is this place? The voice was gone and another phone was ringing. It was in a bedroom with a chandelier, and this phone was the size of a footstool. She had to pick up the receiver with both hands. Hola, oye me? Yes, sure, absolutely talk to me. He didn't. No dial tone. Just gone. The next phone was in a sunroom with a great glass roof, and it was as big as the table it sat on. The ringing hurt her ears. It was like listening to a phone channeled through an amplifier at a rock and roll gig. It was like getting the cops called on you when you did nothing wrong. Quisha ran at it, hands outstretched, palms tilted upward, and knocked the receiver off the phone's base, not because she expected enlightenment, but to shut it up before it burst her eardrums. Ciao, boomed the boy's voice. Me senti, me senti. And that woke her up. 1 second. Turning the air conditioner up. Drinking a bit of coffee. Be right back in a moment. Excuse me. Put protein in my coffee. I didn't probably stir it enough. Anyway, the end of the institute. The big phone. Chapter 5. She was with her buds. Avery, Nikki, George, and Helen. The others still were sleeping, but not easily. George and Helen were moaning. Nicky was muttering something and holding out his hands, making her think of how she'd run at the big phone to make it stop. Avery was twisting around and gasping something that she had already heard. Or Jimmy, or Jimmy. They were dreaming what she had been dreaming, and considering what they were now the Institute had made them. The idea made perfect sense. They were generating some kind of group power. Telepathy as well as telekinesis. So why wouldn't they share the same dream? The only question was which one of them had started it. She was guessing Avery, because he was the strongest. Hive of bees, she thought. That's what we are now. Hive of psychic bees. Alicia got to her feet and looked around, still trapped in the access tunnel that hadn't changed, but she thought the level of that group power had. Maybe it was why the Ward A kids hadn't gone to sleep, although it had to be fairly late. Kalisha's time sense had always been good, and she thought it was at least 9:30, maybe a bit later. The hum was louder than ever, and Han had picked up a kind of cycling beat. She saw with interest but no real surprise that the overhead fluorescents were cycling with the hum. Going bright, fading a little, then going bright again. TK you can actually see, she thought, for all the good it does us. Pete Littlejohn, the boy who had been beating on his head and going ya 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 ya, came loping toward her. In front half, Pete had been kind of cute and kind of annoying, like a little brother that tags after you everywhere and tries to listen in while you and your girlfriends are telling secrets. Now he was hard to look at with his wet, drooping mouth and empty eyes. Yes, Cooks, he said. Worse than me. You dreamed it too, Kalisha said. Pete paid no attention, just turned back toward his wandering mates, now saying something that sounded like Stezes Mini. God only knew what language that was, but Kalisha was sure it meant the same as all the others. I hear you, Kalisha said, to no one. But what do you want? About halfway back down the tunnel, toward the locked door in the back half, something had been written on the wall in crayon. Kalisha walked down to look at it, dodging past several wandering Ward A kids to get there. Written in big purple letters was, call the big phone, answer the big phone. So the Gorks were dreaming it too, only wide awake. With their brains mostly wiped, maybe they were dreaming all the time. What a horrible idea, to dream and dream and dream and never be able to find the real world. You too, huh? It was Nick, eyes puffy with sleep, hair standing up in stalks and spears. It was sort of endearing. She raised her eyebrows. The dream? Big house? Increasingly big phones. Sort of like in the 500 hats of Bartholomew Cubbins. Bartholomew who? A Dr. Seuss book. Bartholomew kept trying to take off his hat for the king, and every time he took one off, there was a bigger and fancy one underneath. Never read it, but the dream, yeah, I think it came from Avery. She pointed to the boy, who was still sleeping the sleep of the totally exhausted. Or started with him, at least. I don't know if he started it, or if he's receiving it, and amplifying it and passing it on. Not sure it matters. Nick studied the message on the wall, then looked around. The Gorks are restless tonight. Cleisha frowned at him. Don't call him that. It's a slave word. Like calling me a nigger. Okay, Nick said. The mentally challenged are restless tonight. That better? Yes, she allowed him a smile. How's your head, Shaw? Better. Fine, in fact. Yours? The same. Mine too, George said, joining them. Thanks for asking. You guys have the dream. Bigger phones and... Hello, how do you hear me? Yeah, Nick said. That's how. Good. That last phone, the one just before I woke up, was bigger than me, and the hum stronger. Then, in the same casual tone, how long do you think before they decide to gas us? I'm surprised they haven't done it already. Chapter 6. The End of the Institute. The part called The Big Phone. 9:45, in the parking lot of the Econo Lodge in Beaufort, South Carolina. I'm listening, Stackhouse said. If you let me help you, maybe we can work this out together. Let's discuss it. Let's not, Luke said. All you have to do is listen and make notes, because I don't want to have to repeat myself. Is your friend Tim still with you? Do you want the flash drive or not? If you don't, keep talking. If you do, shut the fuck up. Tim put a hand on Luke's shoulder in the front seat of the van. Mrs. Sigsbee was shaking her head sadly. Luke didn't have to read her mind to know what she was thinking. A boy trying to do a man's work. Stackhouse sighed. Go ahead, pen and paper at the ready. First, Officer Winnie doesn't have the flash drive. That comes with us, but she knows the names of my friends, Kalisha, Avery, Nikki, Ellen, a couple more, and where they came from. If their parents are dead, like mine, that will be enough to support an investigation, even without the flash drive. She'll never have to say a word about psychic gigs or the rest of your murderous bullshit. They'll find the Institute, even if you get away. Stackhouse, your bosses would hunt you down. We're your best chance of living through this. Got it? Spare me the cell job. What's this Officer Wendy's last name? Tim, who was leaning close enough to hear both sides of the conversation, shook his head. This was advice Luke didn't need. Never mind. Second, call the plane your posse came down in. Tell the pilots there to lock themselves in the cockpit as they soon see us coming. Tim whispered two words. Luke nodded. But before they do that, tell them to lower the air stairs. How will they know it's you? Because we'll be in one of the vans you hired killers came in. Because we'll be in one of the vans your hired killers came in. Luke was pleased to give Stackhouse this information, hoping it rammed home the point. Mrs. Sigsbee had swung and missed. We don't see the pilot and co-pilot, and they don't see us. We land where the plane took off, and they stay inside the cockpit. With me so far? Yes. Third, I want a van waiting for us, a nine-seater, just like the one we drove out of Dupre. We don't. Bullshit, you don't. You've got a motor pool in that little barracks town of yours. I saw it. Now, are you going to work with me on this, or should I just give up on you? Luke was sudden heavily, and not just because the night was humid. He was very glad for Tim's hand on his shoulder and Wendy's concerned eyes. It was good not to be alone in this anymore. He really hadn't realized how heavy that burden was until now. Stackhouse gave the sigh of a man being unfairly burdened. Go on. Fourth, you're going to procure a bus. A bus? Are you serious? Luke decided to ignore this interruption, feeling that it was warranted. Certainly Tim and Wendy looked amazed. I'm sure you have friends everywhere, and that includes at least some of the police in Denison River Bend, maybe all of them. It's summer, so the kids are on vacation, and the buses will be in the town's municipal lot, along with the plows and dump trucks and all the other stuff. Have one of your cop friends unlock the building where they keep the keys. Have him put the key in the ignition of a bus that seats at least 40. One of your techs or caretakers can drive it to the Institute, maybe by the flagpole in front of the admin building with the keys in it. Do you understand all that? Yes. Businesslike, no protests or interruptions now, and Luke didn't need Tim's adult grasp of psychology and motivation to understand why. This Stackhouse must be thinking was a child's harebrained plan, only half a step removed from wishful thinking. He could see the same thing on Tim's face and on Wendy's. Mrs. Sigsbee was in earshot, and she looked like she was having trouble keeping a straight face. It's a simple exchange. You get the flash drive, I get the kids, the ones from back half and the ones in front half too. You had them all ready for their field trip by 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. Officer Wendy keeps her mouth shut. That's the deal. Oh, you also get your piece of shit boss and your piece of shit doctor. Can I ask you a question, Luke? Is that permissible? Go ahead. Once you have somewhere between 35 and 40 children crammed into a big yellow school bus with Dennis and River Bend on the side, where do you plan to take them? Always remembering that the majority have no minds left. Disneyland, Luke said. Tim put a hand to his brow, as if he had developed a sudden headache. We'll be staying in touch with Officer Wendy before we take off, after we land, when we get to the Institute, when we leave the Institute. If she doesn't get a call, she'll start making calls of her own, starting with the Maine State Police, then moving on to the FBI and Homeland Security. Got it? Yes. Good. Last thing, when we get there, I want you there, arms outstretched, one hand on the hood of the bus, one hand on the flagpole. As soon as the kids are on the bus and my friend Tim is behind the wheel, I hand you Maureen's flash drive and get aboard myself. Clear on that? Yes. Crisp, trying not to sound like a man who's won the big jackpot. He understands that Wendy might be a problem, Luke thought, because she knows the names of a bunch of missing kids, but that's a problem he thinks he can solve. The flash drive is a bigger deal, harder to dismiss as fake news. I'm offering it to him, pretty much on a silver platter. How can he refuse? Answer, he can't. Luke, Tim began. Luke shook his head. Not now, not while I'm thinking. He knows the situation is still bad, but now he sees a ray of light. Thank God Tim reminded me of what I should have thought of myself. It doesn't end with Sigsbee and Stackhouse. They have to have their own bosses, people they answer to when the shit hits the fan. Stackhouse can tell them it could have been much worse. In fact, they should be thanking him for saving the day. Will you be calling me before you take off? Stackhouse asked. No, I trust you to make all the arrangements. Although trust wasn't the first word that came to mind when Luke thought of Stackhouse. Next time we talk will be face to face at the Institute, van at the airport, bus waiting by the flagpole. Fuck up at any point and Officer Wendy starts making her calls and telling her tale. Goodbye. He ended the call and sagged. Chapter 7, The Big Phone. Tim handed Wendy the Glock and gestured at their two prisoners. She nodded. Once she was standing guard, Tim drew the boy aside. They stood by the fence, and a blot of shadow cast by one of the magnolias. Luke, it will never work. If we go there, the van may be waiting at the airport, but if this institute is what you say it is, the two of us will be ambushed and killed when we get there. Your friends and the other kids as well. That leaves Wendy, and she'll do her best, but it will be days before anyone shows up there. I know how law enforcement works when something comes up outside of normal protocol. If they find the place, it will be empty except for the bodies. They may be gone too. You said they have a disposal system for the... Tim didn't know exactly how to put it. For the used kids? I know all that, Luke said. It's not about us, it's about them. The kids. All I'm buying is time. Something's happening there, and not just there. I don't understand. I'm stronger now, Luke said. And we're over 1,000 miles from the Institute. I'm a part of the Institute kids, but it's not just them anymore. If it was, I never could have pushed up that guy's gun with my mind. Empty pizza pans were the best I could do, remember? Luke, I just don't... Luke concentrated. For a moment he had an image of the telephone in their front hall ringing, and knew if it was answered someone would ask, "Do you hear me?" Then that image was replaced by the colored dots and a faint humming sound. The dots were dim rather than bright, which was good. He wanted to show Tim, but not hurt him, and hurting him would be so easy. Tim stumbled forward into the chain-link fence, as if pushed by invisible hands, and got his forearms up just in time to keep from dashing his face. Tim? Wendy called. I'm okay, Tim said. Keep your eyes on them, Wendy. He looked at Luke. You did that? It didn't come from me. It came through me, Luke said, because they had time now, a little at least, and because he was curious, he asked, what was it like? A strong gust of wind? Sure it was strong, Luke said, because we're stronger together. That's what Avery says. He's the little kid. Yes, he was the strongest one they've had in a long time, maybe years. I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm thinking they must have put him in the immersion tank, given that near-death experience that enhances the Stasi lights, only with none of the limiting injections. I'm not following you. Luke didn't seem to hear him. It was punishment, I bet, for helping me get away. He tilted his head toward the van. Mrs. Sigsbee might know. It might even have been her idea. Anyway, it backfired. It must have, because they mutinied. The Ward A kids that got the real power. Avery unlocked it. But not enough power to get them out of where they're trapped. Not yet, Luke said, but I think they will. Why? How? You got me thinking when you said Mrs. Sigsbee and Stackhouse must have their own bosses. I should have figured that out for myself, but I never looked that far. Probably because parents and teachers are the only bosses kids have. If there are more bosses, why wouldn't there be more institutes? A car came into the lot, passed them, and disappeared in a wink of red taillights. When it was gone, Luke continued, maybe the one in Maine is the only one in America, or maybe there's one on the West Coast, like bookends, but there might be one in the UK, and in Russia, India, China, Germany, Korea. It stands to reason when you think of it. A mind race instead of an arms race, Tim said. That's what you're saying. I don't think it's a race. I think all the institutes are working together. I don't know that for sure, but it feels right. A common goal, a good one, sort of, killing a few kids to keep the whole human race from killing itself. A trade-off. God knows how long it's been going on, but there's never been a mutiny until now. Avery and my other friends started it, but it could spread. It might be spreading already. Tim Jameson was no historian or social scientist, but he kept up with current events, and he thought Luke could be right. Mutiny or revolution, to use a less pejorative term, was like a virus, especially in the information age. It could spread. The power each of us has, the reason they came not to us and brought us to the Institute in the first place, is just little. The power of all of us together is stronger, especially the Ward A kids. With their minds gone, the power is all that's left. But if there are more institutes, if they know what's happening at ours, and if they were all to band together, Luke shook his head. He was thinking again of the phone in the front hall, only grown to enormous size. If that happened, it would be big, and I mean really big. That's why we need time. If Stackhouse thinks I'm an idiot so eager to save my friends, I'd make an idiotic deal. That's good. Tim could still feel that phantom gust of wind that had shoved him into the fence. We're not exactly going there to save them, are we? Luke regarded him soberly. With his dirty bruised face and bandaged ear, he looked like the most harmless of children. Then he smiled and for a moment didn't look harmless at all. No, we're going to pick up the pieces. And that will be continued in the next chapter. 8. The Big Phone.